have two new legendaries that have come to raid, and these ones are actually a part of a collab. So let's go ahead and break these skills down. Hey you guys, it's Cece. Welcome back to my channel. Now, of course, for today, as mentioned, we are talking about these new champions, and these ones are actually a part of the collab for Alien and Predator. So you guys know Alien versus Predator, the series, the amount of movies, the amount of everything that they've done with it. It is now in raid, which actually gives us two champions. One of these champs is going to be Predator and the other one is Xenomorph. So that is the first one that we're going to go ahead and take a look at. So Xenomorph, being a magic type, is an attack and a part of a Dark Elves. Guys, did I not mention a login champion coming from the Dark Elves faction? That is crazy. It's actually happening. Now, this one being an attack type, we're going to take a look at what all of these skills are. So first off, Tail Stab hacks an enemy 5% poison debuff for 2 turns, 5% poison debuffs if the attack is critical. We're going to want to build this champ with crit for sure, and places a perfect veil buff on this champ for 2 turns. We also have Infestation, attacks an enemy before attacking, places a stun debuff and an infest debuff on the target for 2 turns. These debuffs cannot be resisted if the champion is under perfect veil buff, which we saw on the other skill. Places True Fear, tons of debuffs. True Fear debuff on other enemies for 1 turn. The debuff cannot be resisted if this champion is under the perfect veil buff. Also has a passive effect, revives this champion with 50% HP and 50% turn meter whenever an enemy under an infest debuff dies. Okay, so we kind of have a revive in there. It is like depending on under what conditions, but still it's there. And then Rip and Claw attacks one enemy 2 times, deals 15% more damage for each poison debuff on the target. Also places perfect veil buff on this champ for 2 turns. And we do have a passive as well. Whenever this champion is attacked, has a 25% chance to place a 5% poison debuff on the attacker for 2 turns. The debuff cannot be resisted or blocked if the attack is critical. So again, need to build this champ with crit. If an enemy is under a poison debuff placed by this champ, decreases their defense by 20%. So now looking at this champion from an attack perspective, I will say I like the poison debuffs. I'm good with that. Perfect veil buff on the champ is nice. The stun, but what I'm interested in is this infest debuff. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this. So this one is the new debuff here, infest. So whenever an enemy under an infest, why can't I not say that word? Infest. I feel like it sounds like I'm saying invest. Okay, whenever an enemy under an infest debuff dies, deals pure damage to all other alive enemies. This pure damage is equal to 50% of the enemy's max HP who died while under the debuff. The pure damage cannot be critical, and the pure damage dealt upon killing a boss or their minions cannot exceed more than 10% of their max HP. Okay, interesting. So it's one of those things that if the one that had it on dies, it'll essentially affect other enemies. So it is a new debuff brought into the game specifically by Xenomorph. I mean, they're bringing a new debuff into the game. It's interesting, and I think the champion is kind of interesting. I do like the poison. I think it kind of fits in with other Dark Elves that there are in here, like especially if you got somebody like Kyle. You started with my Link and you got a Lenaril to explode those poisons. Actually, he pairs pretty nicely with other poison champs, which works. And then the stun debuff is nice. We have this new debuff, Perfect Veil. You are definitely potentially doing quite a bit of damage. The Rip and Claw skill deals 15% more damage for each poison debuff on the target. So if you have a ton of champs in your team that do poison, you go ahead and use this skill. A lot of potential there. This is something I will play around with as soon as I get this champion and actually see how he works with poison champs. So be sure that you guys subscribe because I have an idea for some of the videos I'm actually gonna make with this one. So overall for a champion, I mean, I'll take it. As I said, having something in the Dark Elves is definitely a refresher. I don't currently have many champions in there. And I mean, it was a collab that I didn't really actually see coming. So next up, let's go ahead and take a look at Predator. So Predator brings us over to the Lizardmen faction. Now this one being a Force HP type. So first one here, attacks an enemy, heals this champ by 30% of the damage dealt. Passive effect, whenever this champion successfully evades an enemy's skills and all of its effects, counterattacks with this skill. Okay, that's kind of interesting. I do like that you have a heal on that first skill though. A little bit of some self-sustainability. Next, attacks all enemies 2 times. After hitting the initially selected enemy, all other enemies will be hit in a random order For each hit, the damage received by the initial selected enemy will be increased by 75%, and subsequent enemy hits following will receive 15% less bonus damage. Destroys each enemy's max HP by 30% of the damage dealt as well. And then that stacking. For the second hit, the damage received by the initially selected enemy will be increased by 15%. Each subsequent enemy hit following will receive 15% more damage, which will stack even higher. This attack ignores 15% of the target's defense if this champ is under Veil or Perfect Veil. So it is an AoE, hitting everyone 2 times. However, it stipulates how much damage you'll be able to do from it. But you have the potential for it to do quite a bit there. We also have attacks an enemy before attacking, places Hunter's Gaze debuff for a turn. This debuff cannot be resisted if the champ is under Veil or Perfect Veil debuff. I think that is another new one we will take a look at. If the attack kills an enemy, then there is a block revive debuff, which is always nice. And that new debuff as well, on a random alive enemy for a turn. The Hunter's Gaze debuff cannot be resisted if this champ is under Veil. Perfect Veil does not kill an enemy. It will place Perfect Veil buff on this champ for 2 turns. Some of the descriptions are so long. So essentially, we're going to get the debuff, potentially. Veil, Perfect Veil is nice. Got that potential for a block revive as well. We do have a passive. At the start of each round, places a Perfect Veil buff on this champ for a turn. I feel like that matches pretty well with Predator. Like, I like that they've included that in here. Before this champion takes a turn, also has an initial 50% chance to evade an enemy's skill. And this is a passive. If the initial chance reduces to 0 after this champion's first turn in a round. So you actually have that potential to evade, and it is on a passive here. Whenever this champion kills an enemy, it stacks this champion extra 20% chance to evade. I feel like of all the skills, this passive makes a lot of sense for Predator, actually. I appreciate that in here. Now for Aura, it is ally HP in arena battles by 35%. Now these are the 2 newest champs, but I'm curious what this Hunter's Gaze is, so let's look at that. So this is Hunter's Gaze now, so also a new debuff added. Damage dealt to a champion under the Hunter's Gaze debuff cannot be decreased, blocked, redirected, or transferred. This applies only to damage dealt directly by skills, not from debuffs, passive, masteries, or bless. Damage dealt to a champion under this debuff will ignore unkillable. Hey, I see what they're doing here. Block damage, increased defense, strengthen, ally protection, Veil, Perfect Veil, and shield buffs. Champions can still evade damage while under the Hunter's Gaze debuff. Okay, I see what they've done then. I think it brings something new to Raid. I see what they're doing with the unkillable in here as well. So essentially with these champions, we are actually going to be getting 2 new debuffs. Looking at these 2 champions then, between the 2, I do think Predator has a lot going on, and looking at the debuff he has, it is pretty crazy. Hunter's Gaze, it's kind of a crazy debuff if you think about it. Definitely a champion that is leaning more towards that PvP focus. You're being able to essentially ignore some of those protection that normally players have and put up. So definitely, like I say, a PvP focused champion. Can you use in PvE? Yeah, probably for sure, but I see what they're targeting with that. And then we have Xenomorph. Now this one, I think with all the poison, it can definitely work in some dungeons, more so like PvE than PvP. I can't see myself getting this champion and using him in something like arena. Instead, as mentioned earlier, I'd probably try to play around with some poison teams for it. But nonetheless, I mean, it's 2 new legendaries that are coming to the game, and if you are a big fan of the franchise, then this is probably something that you're excited about. For myself, first going into my Lizardman, I mean, my shining star currently is Donnie. Otherwise, I mean, this faction is severely lacking for me. I haven't built a lot of champs in here. I don't want to say like I'm struggling for faction wars, but like low-key, I'm kind of struggling for faction wars a little bit when it comes to it. I'm at 39 right now. It is opening up now. I have Donatello booked, he's built, so I am gonna get further down into there. But it is definitely one of my weaker factions. So, I mean, in that instance, Predator in there, not necessarily a bad thing. Definitely, like I said, I'm lacking there. Now, if we're comparing this to Dark Elves, in Dark Elves, I mean, I've got Visix, that's about it. And then for the epics, I've got some champs I can build, but it's honestly the rares that are carrying my faction wars and anything having to do with Dark Elves. So even though I made the joke we needed something for Dark Elves, it's mainly because I didn't have a lot going on in there for Dark Elves. But going down into my faction wars, like that's 38. It's also pretty low, but now that I've got a lot of my other rares fully built out. They should be able to get further down into there. I still thought Dark Elf Crypt could use some love, and I guess that is where Xenomorph is going to come in. I don't currently think either of these champions are going to be game-changing or breaking for me, so, I mean, it's a cool franchise that's definitely come into play. I want you guys comment down below and let me know what are your thoughts on these two legendary champions, and be sure that you subscribe so you do not miss out as we deep dive further into some of the events that are going to be following with them. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!